Hello and welcome to the next video in Ferris's Fantastic Films. This one today is going to be all about the outcome. So you've been working on your folio, you've been working on trying to do your analysis of your sources, and now we're starting to get to a point where you should be able to identify some of the most key of your findings, the most important bits of information that you're discovering, because now we're going to start writing our answers to those sub-questions that you came up with all those weeks ago. So I've got a few documents that I'm going to show you today, and hopefully that will just make sense of what you're expected to do, and then we can get to it. This video is going to be more about if you're writing a 2,000 word written outcome. Obviously you can create a video. Some people do a 6-minute video and a 1,000 word written piece, or 3-minute video, 1,500 words written. This one is purely going to be about the written component, whether that's 1,000, 1,500 or the full 2,000 words. If you're lucky, I might do another video about how to do a video, which is a little bit ironic. Anyway, let's have a look at some of these documents. If we're writing 2,000 words, I like to split them up into a few different sections. So hopefully by breaking it down this way, you'll see that it's not quite as difficult as you might have once thought, or maybe you think it's pretty difficult right now. So we're going to start with an introduction, and basically all you need to do in this section is to explain what your research project question is about, what the answer to your question is based on the research that you've conducted. If you didn't find a conclusive answer, so if you didn't find a clear-cut or an obvious answer, you mention it here in the outcome, in the introduction to your outcome. You might also want to mention the types of research processes that you've used. So just listing through books, surveys, interviews, etc. These results have been found. It's also worth mentioning the categories, the subtopics or the sub-questions that you've come up with in order to answer your question. Most importantly, you want to list those sub-questions, those subtopics, in sequential order. So if you're doing immunizations, for example, you don't want to start off with a question that goes something like, and what is the future of immunizations in Australia? Because what if we don't know what immunizations are first? That would probably need to go first. So I'd start with a question like, number 1, what is immunizations? Number 2, how do they affect the body? Moving on as you go to maybe number 4, how do we ensure that all students or all young people are immunized in Australia? And so they build in order of their complexity. And so ultimately, you're trying to build towards getting an answer that's going to be really conclusive, be really clear for your overall question. Then we're going to split the next 1,700 words into your main body. And so what I generally do, if you've got 4 sub-questions, that's roughly 425 words each. And if you choose to look at it this way, it's actually not that hard. 425 words is not very long to answer your sub-questions, particularly not if you're trying to weave evidence from the sources that you found into your answer. And so 4 of them at 425 words each really shouldn't be all that difficult, and you should be able to knock that off fairly quickly. I think if you choose to see it this way, a 2,000 word outcome is not going to be as cumbersome as you might have once thought. And so when you're writing your paragraphs, I like to use a structure, and so will most of the research project teachers here at Ranella. We use the TEAL structure. So the T stands for topic sentence, and so I want to know exactly what it is that is going to be in this paragraph right in that opening sentence. Second part, elaboration or an explanation. So what are you actually talking about? So you might want to define terms that could be unusual or unique. You might want to make sure you also, if you do that, reference where you got that idea from. And then examples is the third part. And this is where I'm really looking for you to substantiate your point. Substantiation is a word that you're going to hear a lot. Basically, what it means is I want you to be able to back up the things that you're saying with evidence. You've gone and found all of these sources, so when you're making claims, you should be able to back that up with what you're talking about from the sources, and you've got to reference that. And then lastly, a linking sentence. So you tie everything that you've said together and you link it back to the overall question. Remember that the aim here is to answer the main question, and so that should always be what you're aiming to do, no matter what paragraph or whatever subtopic you're trying to answer. Also, let's just talk briefly about quoting. When you're referring to your sources, please don't quote huge sections from someone else's work. Essentially, you are being marked on what you think and how well you can communicate your thoughts, not someone else's. And so I wouldn't want to read a quote that was larger than about 2 lines. 2 lines of writing. It really needs to be your ideas that are communicated, and they can be supported by, but not be overtaken by, the work of other people. And so every time, oh hello PowerPoint, where did you come from? You can just go back there. You need to always reference those sources that you refer to. If we have a look at this example, this is from the SACEBORD website, by the way, which you can go and have a look at any time. If we have a look at their work here, at their references, they have 1, 2, they've repeated the same source here, they have a third one there. If we keep going down, they've used footnoting as their choice of referencing system. They have a range of different sources. What I really wouldn't want to see is if 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 were all from the same source, because that isn't really what you call substantiation, where you bring together all of your evidence. It's more about just going, here's a website I found, and all the information. I might as well go and read that website. There's no point in you referencing 6, 7, 8, 9, always going through from the same source. You might as well just read that source. So it's about pulling something from this source, something from this source, something from this source, and tying it all together. And that's what, when I look at the references, that's what I should be able to see throughout the work. And ask the other email to come in just then as well. So you've done your 4 sub-questions. If you have a look at this document, these documents are all on Segda, of course, so you can always have a look at them in your own leisure. The last part is the conclusion, 150 words. We're going to summarize the answer to your research project question according to the information that you've already talked about through your research outcome. If you have a topic about immunizations or something like that, I always come back to that one because it's always so topical. You might want to make a comment about what you think the future might be for Australia. You might make some recommendations, and this would be a brief statement at the end. There should be no new information in your conclusion. Everything that you want to say should have already been said in answering your sub-questions. And then right at the end, you're going to include a reference list. So again, if we have a look at this example, we get to the end, and there's this full list of references. They've got legislation, books, websites, plenty of websites. Interesting that they didn't have any primary sources, but there you go. So if you have a look on the SACEBORD website, sace.sa.edu.au, support materials, there are a whole heap of examples of outcomes from the A+ level all the way down to the C. So if you want to see what the work can and does look like, the A+ example here, this is a different version. They looked at architectural redevelopment of the laneways in Adelaide's Midwest districts. Interesting. Creating a more vibrant city. And they've actually created a magazine article. So they went and took these photos themselves. Plenty of artworks and photos from city. And then they have written their work, their introduction. If you put this as a report, well, here's all your sub-questions. Got lots of footnotes the whole way around. More sub-questions. They've got the images to support their work as well. So that's certainly an option that you can go with if you would like. But otherwise, I would stick to the written report, and we will continue having a look at this as we go over the next couple of weeks. Ciao.